New word that the Pentagon has given the green light to the military to attack ISIS in Afghanistan. The new rules of engagement put the terror group in the same category as al-Qaeda, allowing U.S. forces to target the militants at will in the war-torn country. But it also comes amid some growing criticism for the Obama administration's strategy against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. So, as the focus turns to yet another front, how does the big picture look in the fight against ISIS? Our next guest testified yesterday before the Senate Armed Services Committee on a panel that included former U.S. Ambassador to Afghanistan and Iraq, Ryan Crocker. General Jack Keane, retired four-star Army general and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. He is a Fox News military analyst as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here, Heather.
So this new designation for ISIS in Afghanistan and the change in the rules of engagement, what exactly does that mean?
Well, as part of the intro indicated, now that they're part of a foreign terrorist organization, we have forces that are in Afghanistan. Before that designation, they can only defend themselves against an ISIS attack. Now it means we can go on the offense, but it's limited. As you know, we have 9,800 troops there. The overwhelming majority of those troops are training and assisting Afghan forces. So they're not conducting combat operations, and they have not been doing so for the last year. However, we do have special operations forces whose mission is to attack and target Taliban leaders and now ISIS leaders in Afghanistan. So they will be conducting offensive direct action missions against those leaders, and that's a good thing.
So before hostile intent had to be shown, before any action could be taken.
That's correct.
When will this go into effect? Has it already gone into effect?
I think it's already in effect. Now listen, our audience should know that ISIS in Afghanistan is not yet a consequential force in Afghanistan. Certainly the Taliban are, who we've been very familiar with for 14 years, and the Haqqani network, who operates east of Kabul, and this is the area where ISIS is operating with also, which is a derivative of the Taliban. It'll take some time for ISIS to grow into that kind of a force.
But we don't want that to happen.
We don't want it to happen. Secondly, you know, when I think about what are they doing in Afghanistan, this is so close to the al-Qaeda leadership, who are in a sanctuary across the border into Pakistan. I think part of this is really to undermine the stature of the al-Qaeda leadership in terms of the world radical Islamic movement. And here we are right at the doorstep of the al-Qaeda senior leadership conducting our operations, almost right in front of them.
So you have al-Qaeda, you have ISIS, and both groups trying to prove who is the tougher, bigger group.
That's right, and this is one of the problems we have, and we talked about it in testimony yesterday. You know, we're 14 years after 9/11, and we've never developed a comprehensive strategy to deal with radical Islam as a whole. And actually, the 9/11 Commission recommended that there should be a global alliance to do it, and suggested likely the United States could have a major role to play in that and putting that together, like we did with the National Atlantic Treaty Organization in Europe, dealing with communist ideology for a multi-generational post-World War II experience. That makes compelling sense, and we still have not done it. And it's one of the problems. We're going to bounce around from al-Qaeda to ISIS to something else if we don't get everybody involved in doing this all at the same time.
Yeah, and some people would argue that we don't have strategies in place to deal individually with those groups as well. I do want to move to this before we run out of time. ISIS has this online magazine, and in it they call for not attacks against Westerners, but attacks against other Muslims.
Yeah, certainly they do. ISIS is a Sunni-based organization, and they consider Shias as apostates, essentially non-believers, and therefore, as non-believers, according to their political and religious ideology, they have the right to kill them. And they have done that, and they're exploiting this a little bit more than they've ever done. I think the reason is the Iranian-backed Shia are fighting them in Iraq, and the Iranian-backed Shia are fighting them in Syria. I think that's why they put such a spotlight on it. I mean, we don't know for sure. I'm speculating here. But I also don't want the audience to think that ISIS is simply a sectarian conflict between Shia, because their goals in the region, Heather, are to dominate the Arab Muslim countries in the region. And most of those countries are, in fact, Sunnis. They will go into those countries if they were permitted to do so, and they would kill thousands of Sunnis to take over control of that country, as they have killed hundreds of Sunnis in Syria and in Iraq, to take control of the Sunni territory, which is the only territory that they own in Syria and in Iraq.
All right. Well, and these ideological differences between those two groups have gone on for years and years and years.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your insight. I know you got to head somewhere, but we appreciate you coming in. John?